Mauritania is the 11th largest country in Africa, but its size is one of the biggest illusions in modern geography. Its land covers over 1 million square kilometers, but over 90% of that land is effectively empty. You can fly over this country for 3 hours and see nothing. Below stretches a land larger than France and Spain combined, reaching from the Atlantic Ocean deep into the Sahara Desert. Today we are looking at a nation that has been physically squeezed into its own corners. Nearly 5.5 million people live here, but they aren't spread out. 1/3 of the entire population lives in a single sand-swept city on the coast. Most of the rest cling to a thin green ribbon of water in the extreme south. Between them lies a vast expanse of nothingness. But there are deep questions. How did the nation become so empty? Was it always this way? And why did millions of people choose to build a life in a place that the planet seemed determined to reclaim? To understand the mystery of Mauritania, we have to look past the maps and into the history of a landscape that turned against its people and a group of people who refused to leave. When you look at a population density map of the world, most countries look like a gradient. You have dark, dense clusters in the cities that gradually fade into lighter shades in the countryside. But the map of Mauritania looks like a mistake. It is almost entirely white, punctuated by 2 dark, heavy ink blots. To put this into perspective, we have to talk about density. The global average population density is around 60 people per square kilometre. In the United Kingdom, that number jumps to 280. In France, it's over 100. Even in neighbouring Mali, which shares much of the Sahara, the density is around 18. But Mauritania, it sits at a staggering 5 people per square kilometre. But even that number is a lie. If you actually went to the 900,000 square kilometres that make up the interior, the density isn't 5, it's close to 0. This is because the geography there isn't just dry, it's hyper-arid. Roughly 80% of the entire country receives less than 100 millimeters of rain per year. To put that in perspective, that's less than 4 inches of water to sustain an entire year of life. It's one of the most extreme examples of macro-urbanization on the planet. This isn't just a country with a big city, it's a city that happens to have a country-sized backyard. This concentration creates a strange reality. In the capital, Nouakchott, you have traffic jams, bustling markets and high-rise construction, but just 30 minutes outside the city limits, the phone signal disappears and you enter a world that hasn't changed since the Middle Ages. It's a transition so abrupt it feels like it's fallen off the edge of the world. To understand why people fled the interior, you have to understand the environments they were running from. Mauritania isn't just in the Sahara, it is the Sahara's fortress. Between 75% and 90% of the country is classed as hyper-arid desert. This isn't just the pretty sand dunes you see in movies, the Mauritanian Sahara is diverse and brutal. You have the ergs, vast seas of shifting sand that can reach heights of 300 meters. These dunes aren't static, they're alive. Driven by the harmattan, a dry, dust-laden trade wind, these dunes march across the landscape, burying roads, wells, and even entire villages in their path. Then you have the regs. These are the gravel plains. They are flat, black, and stony, stretching to the horizon with a monotony that can break a person's mind. In the summer, the stones absorb the sun's heat until the ground itself reaches temperatures that would melt the soles of your shoes. Rainfall here isn't measured in inches, it's measured in memories. Some parts of northern Mauritania haven't seen a meaningful drop of rain in years. But the desert also hides secrets that feel like they belong in a science fiction novel. Deep in the Ardar Plateau lies the Richat structure, the Eye of the Sahara. This 40-kilometre wide bullseye is so massive, it's used as a landmark by astronauts in orbit. For decades, it was the subject of wild theories. Was it a meteor strike? Was it the site of the lost city of Atlantis? The scientific truth is slightly less mythical, but still incredible. It's a geological dome that rose from the Earth 100 million years ago and was slowly carved into a target shape by the relentless wind. It stands as a symbol of the country, beautiful, mysterious, and almost completely uninhabitable. It's a place of wonder that offers absolutely nothing to support human life. If the interior is so empty, why does the government even bother with it? The answer lies in the rocks, specifically iron ore. Mauritania is one of the world's leading exporters of iron, and almost all of it comes from the heart of the void. To get that ore to the coast, the Mauritanians built one of the most incredible pieces of infrastructure on earth, the Mauritania Railway. It's a single track, 704 kilometers long, connecting the mining town of Zouarat to the port of Nouadhibou, and running on that track is the iron ore train. This train is a behemoth. It is often 2.5 to 3 kilometers long, consisting of over 200 cars. It's so heavy that it takes kilometers just to come to a stop. But the train isn't just for rocks. Because there are no roads in the deep north, the train has become the only way to travel. People, known as iron riders, climb on top of the piles of iron ore, huddling in the wind for a 20-hour journey across the desert. They travel through suffocating heat by day and freezing temperatures by night, covered in a fine layer of black iron dust. They do it to trade goods, to visit family, or to escape the isolation of the mining camps. It's a visceral reminder that even in the most empty places on Earth, human necessity finds a way to move. The train is the only pulse in a land that is otherwise flatlining. It wasn't always this way. If you went back 500 years, the void of Mauritania was actually a bustling corridor of globalization. This was the heart of the trans-Saharan trade routes. Cities like Chinguetti, Ouaddain and Tichit were the Silicon Valleys of their era. Chinguetti in particular was the 7th holiest city in Islam. It was a massive centre of scholarship, home to thousands of ancient manuscripts covering everything from astronomy to Islamic law. These cities were built on the wealth of salt and gold caravans. They were lush, vibrant and populated. But as the trade route shifted to the coast and the climate began its long dry march, these cities began to starve. Today they are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, but they are also tragedies in slow motion. In Chinguetti, the sand is literally at the door. You can walk through the old town and see the tops of doorways that have been buried. The librarians here fight a daily battle to keep the dust off the 13th century books. They are the guardians of a memory of a time when the desert was a bridge, not a barrier. If the decline of the caravan cities was a slow fade, the final emptying of Mauritania was a sudden, violent shock. It happened in the late 1960s and early 1970s. This was the Great Sahel drought. For centuries, the majority of Mauritanians were nomads. But this wasn't a simple society. It was defined by rigid social hierarchies. You had the nomadic ruling classes and the marginalised groups beneath them. Mauritania's history is deeply intertwined with these structures. Famously, it was the last country on earth to officially abolish slavery in 1981, and it didn't criminalise the practice until 2007. These nomads were the Moors, masters of the desert who lived in tents and moved with the seasons. Their entire wealth was tied to their livestock, camels, goats and cattle. They lived in a delicate balance with the Sahel, the semi-arid transition zone that used to be much further north than it is today. But between 1968 and 1974, the rain simply vanished. Year after year, the clouds teased the horizon and then disappeared. The pastures turned to dust, the wells, some of which had been used for generations, went dry. In less than a decade, nearly 90% of the country's livestock perished. This was a total collapse of the biological bank account. The nomads didn't just lose their income, they lost their entire way of life. This sparked one of the fastest urbanizations in human history. People didn't move to the cities because they wanted jobs. They moved because they were starving. They arrived in Nouakchott with nothing but the clothes on their backs. In 1960, only 50% of Mauritanians lived in cities. Today, that number is over 60%. The desert didn't just grow, it evicted its people. This brings us to Nouakchott. When Mauritania was looking for a capital in 1958, they didn't have many options. They chose a tiny fishing village on the coast, primarily because it was halfway between the different ethnic regions of the country. It was designed for a maximum population of 15,000 people. Today, it's home to nearly 1.6 million. The city didn't grow, it exploded. Because the growth was so fast and so unplanned, Nouakchott is a city of contradictions. You have modern paved boulevards that lead into sprawling informal settlements where homes are still built out of scrap wood and corrugated metal, mimicking the layout of the tents that people once lived in. But the biggest threat to Nouakchott isn't the sand, it's the water. The city sits on a coastal depression, much of it below sea level. As the ocean rises on one side and the dunes press in on the other, the city is caught in a pincer movement. Furthermore, the city has no natural fresh water. Every drop of water that 1.6 million people drink has to be piped in from the Senegal River, hundreds of kilometers to the south. It's an engineering miracle that is also a terrifying vulnerability. If Nouakchott is the brain of the country, the Senegal River Valley is its heart. This is the only part of Mauritania that looks like the rest of tropical Africa. Here, the beige of the Sahara finally gives way to a vibrant deep green. The river forms the border with Senegal, and for the people living here, the void of the north feels like a different planet. This is also where the country's ethnic map shifts. About 70% of Mauritanians are Moors, divided into the Bidhan, or white Moors, of Arab-Berber descent, and the Haratin, black Moors. The remaining 30% are sub-Saharan ethnic groups like the Pulaar, Soninke and Wolof. This explains the genius and the tension of the capital, Nouakchott. It was built as a neutral bridge between the Arab-influenced desert of the north and the African-influenced valley of the south. But as the desert expands, these two worlds are being pushed closer together. There is a constant tension between the farmers of the south and the herders of the north, who are being forced further south in search of grass. It's a reminder that in a country this empty, the small amount of land that is usable becomes the most contested and precious resource on earth. Is there any hope for the 90%? Can the void be reclaimed? The Mauritanian government is currently part of the Great Green Wall, an ambitious project to plant an 8,000 kilometre barrier of trees across the width of Africa to stop the Sahara's advance. It's a race against time. At the same time, new discoveries are changing the map again. Massive offshore gas fields and new gold mines in the interior are creating boom towns in the middle of nowhere. We might see a new wave of migration, but this time it will be driven by industry, not tragedy. Yet for now, the reality remains. Mauritania is a country that teaches us about the limits of human geography. It shows us what happens when a nation is forced to retreat, and how culture survives even when the landscape becomes a ghost. Mauritania doesn't show us where people live, it shows us where they can't. And there are more places like that than you think. If you want to see more geography deep dives, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.